Hi, this is Paul Stoltz from iPhone Dev TV. We're continuing with our little code tutorial on how to calculate someone's birth date. And right now, what I'm going to do is start writing some code on this right panel. So we don't need to keep both of these open at the same time. I like to sometimes focus on code. Now that we've made all the connections from our user interface, we can focus in on the code here. So I'm going to switch back to our single view, which is this button right here. And then we'll jump back to viewController.swift. So in this code file, we have three different methods. We have something that happens when the app starts. That's the viewDidLoad method. Then we have a did receive memory warning. We actually don't need to worry about this at all. If you want, you can get rid of it. So you can just hit delete after selecting it. And then we have our method that we added when the button is pressed. So this is where we're going to do all of the logic down in here. And let's go ahead and stop this and run it. Make sure everything's still working. So we've got the app working, we press the button, and nothing is being calculated yet. So let's start grabbing the date and working with date objects. And so the first thing that we're going to want to do here is use a class called the date components, the NS date components. Now, you'll see a lot of class names here that start with NS, and that stands for Next Step, which was the company that Steve Jobs founded after he was kicked out of Apple, and then Apple bought Next Step, and that's why we have some of these names, because it's coming from the Mac platform that Steve Jobs was working on when he was at Next. So let's go ahead and create a new variable. When we create a variable right here on line 30, you're going to use the var keyword. So this stands for variable, and you can use this for any different type. So this is a little bit different coming from other programming languages where you have specific types. In Swift, you don't have to specify a type. It will actually figure out what kind of type it is. And if you don't know what a type is, don't worry too much. We're just going to create a variable, and you can think of this as a sticky note. So it's going to be called date components. And the reason we're creating this is because we need to work with people's birthdays. And people remember their birthday based on the day, the month, and the year. And so we're going to create a date components that's going to be based on my birthday. But if you're following along, which I do highly recommend, so start writing this code if you don't already have it, you're going to put in your birthday. So we're going to grab the day text field here. Sorry, wrong line. We're going to create... blah. Okay, so right now we are going to create an NS date components object. And so you write the full name here. Now it is case sensitive, so that's a capital N, capital S, capital D, and then a capital C. So NS date components, and to create it, we put the open, close parentheses. So that creates a new object for us to work with. And now we can use the name and access different attributes. So we have a day attribute. And so I was born on April 9th, 1986. So I'm going to put in 9 here. And then we'll go to the next line and set the month. So the month would be April, which is 4. And then the year is going to be 1986. So I'm 28 right now. We're going to find out how many days I've been alive. Now, one of the things that you see right here is that I made a little typo. Now, everything that we are writing with code is going to be very precise. So you'll see a suggestion, and it's telling me to insert a semicolon. This is actually incorrect. What we're missing here is an equals sign, and we call this the assignment operator. So what we're saying is take this value and store it in this sticky note, and it's basically writing a sticky note, putting it on the wall, and that's how we give information to the computer. We create these things called variables, and we can pass in numbers, text, video, and all kinds of other things that you can create by combining all of that together. All right, so now that we have a date component, we're moving in the direction. Okay, so now that we have a date component, we're moving in the direction where we can turn this into an actual date object so that we can do some calculations with it. And we're going to be using a couple new classes. One is called the calendar class. So this is the NS Gregorian calendar that we need to set up. And this is how we can work with dates without having to do all of the fancy date math, because working with time is actually really complex, but thankfully Apple has provided a lot of free code. So we're going to go ahead and create a calendar object, and this calendar is from the NS calendar class. So all of these classes are things that Apple has written, and this takes one parameter. So right here, you're going to see identifier string, and the string that we're going to pass in is called NS Gregorian calendar. So we do that, and that is our next line. So this is creating a calendar object. This is used for date calculations. Next, we will create a birth date using the date component. So there is a method that we can call. This is a chunk of code that will run on the calendar object. So if we say calendar dot date from components, we can pass in our date components. So this is basically allowing us to do some of these date calculations, creating a date object. And a date object is the NS date type. So that is what we are getting here. And then we're going to grab the current date right now, which is going to be our nsdate.date. And so that will give us the current date. Now, we haven't done any output right now, so I want you to play around with doing a print statement. So we'll go ahead and do a print line, so print ln, and we're just going to print out the birth date, and then we'll print out the current date. Now, you can do a text output here, so we can just do something like current date, and there's this thing called string interpolation. So we can do a backslash and then open parentheses and pass in the current date, then close that parentheses and end the quotation marks, and then we can end our parentheses again. And you'll notice right now that Xcode has a little bug here. It just inserted an extra quote. We don't want that, so I'm going to delete that right at the end of the line here. So if you didn't see that, I just removed it right down here. Okay, so now let's go ahead and run this, and you'll see what happens when we press the button. So I'm going to click on the button right here, and now we see two values. We get an optional value, which is my birth date, and you'll see that this has a 5 here. That's because I'm in the Eastern time zone, so it's going to be a +5 from the UTC or the GMT time zone. And that is my birthday. So then we see the current day, which is right here. So it's August 29th, and right now it is 3:59 p.m. plus 6 seconds, and that is all going to be in the UTC time zone. So it's not in what you're seeing here. It doesn't match what you're seeing up here. It's off, and you have to do a little bit of math to calculate that. So now we have those two dates, and what we want to do here is we want to subtract the dates from each other. So we have a method that's going to allow us to do that. And once we do that, then we can construct a new date component object, and then we can pull out how many days I've been alive from that date components. So we're jumping through a couple hoops here, but this is a great exercise if you have to do any kind of date calculations in your app, or even if you just want to display like how many seconds ago a post was tweeted, or a post on Facebook was posted. Like any kind of date or time calculation, you're going to have to do something similar to this process. So I think this is an excellent exercise. And if you're struggling to keep up right now, just pause the video and you can catch up. Okay, so that's it for this part. In the next video, I'm going to finish off with the calculations so that you can get this working, and then we can start testing it out on the actual iPhone.